Hello, welcome back to a new video. Are you just getting started in Lightroom or any other photo editing software? Or have you been taking photos for a long time, exporting them in JPEG, and completely looking over the thoughts of post-production because it seems too much to learn for you? This is the video for you today. I'm going to take you through my basic photography workflow on some photos that I took in beautiful Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia. And we're just going to show you everything that you need to know from a beginner's standpoint to get better at photo editing. So if you like these videos, make sure you hit that like button, and without any further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, welcome into Lightroom. So I've been having trouble with my catalog, so my Lightroom Classic might look slightly different than yours, but let's just very quickly go over these up here. So the two that you're mainly going to deal in is Library and Develop. Develop's where you do your edits, Library is where you manage all of your files. So in order to get your photos in here, you come to Import, and then you're going to, wherever you put your photos, you're going to find that folder. You're going to click on it, you're going to select the photos that you want in, and then you're going to import. Obviously I have these already in there, so I don't need to import. The photos that we're going to have a look at today are two that I took in Peggy's Cove, and it's going to give you a real good idea of basic editing and where that can take you, and then how to use masks and stuff. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So this is a photo that, like I said, I took in Peggy's Cove. Is this the one I want to deal with? There's my edited version. Is this it? No, this is it. So this is the one we're going to deal with. Although this doesn't look like... There we go. I was wondering why it was looking so terrible. So like I said, I've been having trouble with my catalog. I'm going to make a separate video about that because I know that other people are having the exact same trouble, and I think I figured out why it is that it's happening, but we'll get into that in a different video. So this is the final product. This is what I started with. This photo was exposed pretty nicely, as you can see. I could have brightened it a little bit, but I didn't want to do an HDR photo, so I just stuck with the best exposure that I could get, and I felt that this was it. At the time, I was pretty new to photography, so I'm very happy with how this turned out. Let's just do that one more time. And you guys saw before I updated those masks. Basically, that's what you can do with just normal editing. So let's just go through how I would edit this photo in normal context. So as you can see here, we have no clipping anywhere. And all clipping is if you expose the image too bright and the sensor has too much light getting in. Here, I'll just show you. Let's do this. So I'm going to turn clipping on up here, and then we're going to raise the exposure, and you'll see this is clipping. So when you have too much light or too little light and the photo isn't showing any detail, it's just either white or black, that's what we consider clipping. And you want to try to avoid that unless you're being artistic with it. There is an artistic way to use this. We're not going to really get into that in this video. We're just going to assume that we want all the detail out of this photo that's possible. So the way that I like to start is getting the exposure right. So you want to have your histogram looking something like this. Nothing bunched up here. Nothing like this. You'll see if we pull it down, it gets bunched up on the left side. And if we pull it to the right, it gets bunched up on the right side. So what we want to do is keep that somewhere in the middle and have the data spread out across your histogram. So I like the way this is exposed. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the highlights. And we know that in this photo, the highlights are way too high. And I find for a good chunk of my photos, this is always true, that you're just going to want to bring those highlights down. And as you can see, that brought some detail into the clouds. We can do better than that though, so don't worry yet. And then the next thing I go for is shadows. What shadows does is it takes the darker parts of your images and it applies some added brightness to them, and that can kill your, can take your shadows away. If you go too extreme with this, you'll get almost a whitewashed effect across the whole image, so you don't want to do that. Sometimes shadows can even be a good thing to deal with in masks, but we'll get to that in a second. So basically what you want to go for here, in my opinion, is you want to bring out the detail without making it look unnaturally bright. So when people are looking at a photo, they can understand if the scene looks unnaturally lit. And in my opinion, I mean, this was a really bright day, so there wouldn't be many shadows aside from directional light. And so basically you just want to see, if you go down too far, you can tell that it doesn't match the brightness of the photo. If you go too high, it gets whitewashed. So I like to pick somewhere in the middle. And when it comes to whites, your camera is always trying to figure out how white your white should be. So if you found that your whites are looking a little bit like this throughout the whole image, you might just want to bring up the whites just a little bit. The only problem with this is it's also going to add that to the sky. So when we're in this tab and just doing basic edits, I like to basically leave white and black alone. Don't do too much to it. Usually I'll do something just exactly like this. And then after I figure out these 4 sliders, go to the contrast. And what contrast does is it takes the darker parts of your images and it makes them slightly darker, and it takes the lighter parts of your images and leaves them alone, creating contrast. I mean, it's exactly how it sounds. It creates contrast between the lights and darks in your photo. So let's crank it up all the way. You'll see how that affects the image. So I like to go for somewhere between like 20 and 40 usually. Typically, it depends on the photo though and your subject. So now that we have from presence up done, what I like to look at next is, can I make this image better with the exposure slider? So on some of your images you'll find that at this point your images are too bright or your images are too dark, and you can fix this with the exposure. So the exposure does what these 4 sliders do, but it does it all at once. Right? So I think right there looks pretty good. Let's look at the original again. You can see we got a lot of detail back in the sky, but the buildings still look pretty natural and well lit and all that, so very nice. I'm happy with that. Now this part here is very what's the word I'm looking for? It's based on your preference. I like to add just a little bit of texture because I find that it makes the image pop a little bit more. But as for clarity and dehaze, I tend to try to leave these alone. When you do dehaze, what it does is it saturates parts of the images. It adds some saturation and some contrast. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I know that if you get extreme with it, it makes extreme changes to your photo. So I like to basically leave that alone, or do targeted dehazing on just the sky or on just the water with masks. But we'll get into that in just a minute here. And then the vibrance and the saturation, 2 of your most important sliders, especially if you're working with raw photos. So as you guys know, raw photos come kind of gray washed. They're kind of not colorful. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but adding vibrance, and this isn't going to be a comprehensive look at what these 2 sliders do, but basically, if you want to think of it in beginner's terms, moving the vibrance button up, or slider up, adds adds saturation to the more colorful parts of the image and kind of leaves the other parts alone, whereas saturation kind of just blanket pulls the colors up. So I like to be very cautious with how much I use the saturation slider, and I tend to rely on the vibrance slider more than I do the saturation slider. Okay, and I think overall that looks pretty good for our basic slide here. Oh, the other thing too is the color profile. So think of the color profile as presets. They're basically just presets that change the look of all of your image. When you're dealing with stuff like this, I almost always use landscape. It's the best looking one. It adds a touch of contrast and a bit of saturation, but most of the time, for me, it's the best option. In this new update to Lightroom Classic, you also get adaptive color and adaptive monochrome, or adaptive black and white, and those are really cool. I haven't played with them much yet, so maybe if you guys would like a video for that, let me know in the comments. The other thing you can do here is you can browse. There's all kinds of different presets here, and as you can see, there's some of them make the image look really cool. Let's just see. There's some more here. So the modern ones I find are really nice. And a lot of the times, if you're using the new presets that Lightroom uses, they will take advantage of these color profiles. So yeah, basically it changes the color scheme of your photo overall. We're not going to get too heavy into that though. That's basically all I'm going to tell you about that. I like to use landscape, and also you have a slider for that. It doesn't appear that you can use it for the landscape, but most of these have a slider that you can affect the amount that it's affecting your image. Okay, now that we have that done, the next thing that I like to do in the image is people will tell you to go to the tone curve. Lately I've been finding the tone curve is kind of useless. I just use color grading. So if we play with this wheel here, you'll see, and take note to where this is affecting the image. Just in the midtones. And wouldn't you know it, midtones. So basically you'll see this is just affecting the water there and the land. So we're going to turn this up just a little bit, past half. This is the shadows. This will affect the dark parts of the image. Do a little bit of discoloring here just to show you. And if you guys want to get artistic with your colors, this is the spot to do it. But we're not going to do that for today's video. We're just going to leave it in the middle here. And I find with the shadows, almost every time you want to bring it down just a little bit, and it kind of feels very similar to the contrast slider. But I like to bring that down just till it feels natural. If you bring it up, as you can see, it makes kind of like a whitewashing effect on your image, which in some scenarios you might want. Know what I'm saying? So basically, here's the middle. We just want to bring it down just a little bit. And then we have the highlights. So this will affect mostly the sky and then some of the water down here. And we're basically going to leave that right in the middle. Here's a trick that I recently learned. If you hold down Alt while you're moving these sliders, it will show you which part of the image is being affected when you change the slider. Very handy. And you can do this on lots of sliders in Lightroom. So yeah, this affects more of the image, this affects less of the image. So if you want to affect just less of the image, just know you can play with that there, and if you hold Alt while you're doing it, it'll show you exactly what we're doing. A better way to visualize that actually is in the sharpness. So I just learned this, by the way. So if you hold Alt and go to masking, you'll see down here it's affecting all of the image, and as you move over, it's showing you the parts that it's going to sharpen. And if you don't know what sharpening is just, it adds a little bit of texture around the detailed spots of your image. Don't want to do too much sharpening here. I got this pretty good. It was taken at a high shutter speed.
Bruh.
Oh, no, it wasn't. Never mind. Anyway, we won't worry about that. But yeah, that's a cool tip. If you hold Alt and then push this in, you'll see where it's affecting the image. Okay, and then after I'm done with the color grading, and then we're not actually done with the color grading, sorry. So if you want to do a global color scheme and change, go from three-way and go over here to global. And if you click here, they got some presets. Sometimes these look pretty cool. So this adds kind of like a cool effect to your image with some blues. This adds a warm effect to your image via some yellows. And the next three are kind of just like semi-neutral, neutral, warm neutral, and cool neutral. I think for this image we'll go with neutral. I like the look of it. And we'll just stay there. Okay. And then of course you can also do your lens corrections and stuff. This isn't going to be a long enough video for me to get into that. So if you want to learn more about this particular slot, Google it. There's lots of information out there. Alright, now we're going to get into the piece de resistance, masks. So in the new updated version of Lightroom Classic, you have this option now, landscape. And this is powerful, powerful stuff, especially if you have an image with clear delineations between features in the image. So let's just click on landscape, and it brings you up a list of all the features that it can find with AI in the image. So as you can see, it isolated the sky, it isolated the architecture. I wish it would have got the boats, but it didn't. It isolates the vegetation, the water, and the natural ground. So the two that we want to worry with today is sky. We're going to create a mask for the sky. We're going to create new mask. Landscape again. And we're going to get the water. We want to bring the reflection out of the water, and we want to get more detail in the sky. Anything else we'll probably do with just radials or linear gradients. So I'll show you that in a second. So let's start with the sky. So as I've already told you guys, the sky is way overexposed. So what we can do here is bring some of that detail back by pulling the slider down. I like to add a little bit of contrast to the sky. The sky is also a little bit blue for my liking, a little bit cool, so we're going to warm it up just a little bit. And as you can see, that brought it back closer to white. And you're going to have to disregard these things up here. That was dust on my sensor. Don't hang me. I've since learned to be better at cleaning it. And so yeah, the problem with the sky is still the highlights, so we can bring the highlights out a little bit. Maybe bring that back up just a touch. Like it to be a little whiter. And that should be good. I really like the way that sky looks. Let's turn, and yeah, if you want to shut this mask off or look to see how it looks without it, you can click this eye button. What a difference, right? What a difference. And as Lightroom updates, it gets better. In previous versions, you would have some haloing around the horizon here. Haloing is just when there's a difference in exposure. Sometimes you'll get some light bleeding through that looks very unnatural. That's what we call haloing. But overall, this looks really good. There's not much haloing to be seen. So I like the way that sky turned out. Let's have a look. Original. Now. Original. Now. Okay. Let's go to the water next. I got some really nice reflections on this day, so we want to bring that out. There's a couple different ways we could do this. I want to brighten the sky a little bit, and then we're going to add some contrast. We're going to bring the highlights down just a touch. We are going to bring the shadows up just a touch, and you'll see that the reflections are already starting to come through a little bit better with more clarity. I also want to warm that up. I'm gonna leave that pretty neutral. Don't want the water to be blue. Don't want it to be like yellow. So we'll leave it somewhere there. I think that looks pretty good overall. Might even pull a little bit of saturation no, I guess we better not. Just because it was also affecting the reflection. So we're gonna leave it just like that. Not too much saturation, but a little bit. And then here, this is where we're going to make some targeted effects to the image. So in the water, I want to increase the clarity. I'm not exactly sure what that does. It adds a little bit of saturation and just, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how it accomplishes this, but it makes things clearer. Clarity. So then, like I told you guys before, the dehaze button adds a little bit of saturation and it takes the haze out. So we want to just up that just a little bit until we see that the reflection is the whole way we want it. Let's look again. Yeah, that's a big difference. It might not look like a huge difference to you guys, but that really makes the image pop. Very cool. And then I think, is that basically going to do it? No, I think we'll add one more mask. And what we'll do here is we're going to add a radial gradient. And basically all a radial gradient is a radial. So I want this to go through this whole section of the image. And we're not going to make any crazy changes here, just enough to make it pop. Okay. And we're going to go here, we're going to add a little bit more contrast. We're going to raise the exposure just a touch. The highlights just a touch that we brought out in the original image. And yeah, we'll pull a little bit of the shadows out just to make sure everything's nice and clear there. Yeah, just a little bit of white, a little bit of black. And I want to very, very, very slightly cool it off. Just like that. So let's look without it. Just makes the boats in the middle of the image pop a little bit more. And if you're finding that you have a hard line here, one thing you can do is go to the feather and just feather it out a little bit more. And as you'll see, that just makes the edges a little more feathered. So it's not, a hard line in your photo. All right, let's go back to the edit tab, and we're going to look before, after, before, after. And here's another thing you can do with radial gradients. Let's create a vignette with a radial. So basically you just want to come to the middle, open up a big radial, and have it so just the corners are not being affected. We're going to bring the feather down a little bit. And that gives you a good idea. So hard line, feathered. There, and then basically we want to invert this mask. That way it's only affecting the corners. And we can bring down the exposure just a little bit for some artistic effect. I like the way that looks. So let's go one more time. Before, after. It's a really nice looking photo. I'm really happy with it. Except for these stupid dust particles that I left on my sensor before I knew what the hell I was doing. So yeah. That's basically how I go about editing a landscape photo like this. Let me take a look at one more example and I'll show you. I basically did the exact same thing to this image. As you can tell, I got the vignetting in. Let's look at the masks here. We got to update them. So basically these four masks aren't working. So let's see what it does to the image after we update it. There we go. Look at that. So there it is without masks. And there it is with. Before and after. So as you can see, you can make some really, really powerful edits inside of Lightroom. And at the end of the day, this is an art form, so you might not want to follow exactly what I'm doing, but that's your prerogative. And I think that's basically going to do it for today, guys. I'll just show you this picture too. Nothing real special about this one. I don't even think I put any masks on it. This is just Peggy's Cove Lighthouse. If you've never been to Nova Scotia, this is probably our most famous landmark, I would probably say. The most visited one for sure. If you're ever in Nova Scotia, be sure to come check this out. Just looking at the coastline around here is well worth your trip outside of Halifax too. Alright, and that's going to do it for this Lightroom Basics tutorial. If you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure you check out more of my catalog. And also make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my videos in the future. And thanks very much again. Until next time, peace.